Hey good people, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'll be sharing my thoughts and feelings on episode 2 of Naked and Afraid Last One Standing. And over the course of this video, I won't be giving the traditional recap on the episode. Instead, I'll be sharing my thoughts on the episode, as well as how I felt the teams did over the course of the episode. So without any further delay, let's jump right in. After watching episode 2, I have to say that my expectations were definitely subverted. Before watching this episode, I initially thought that Jeff would have gotten in the heads of the other cast members and that he would have been dictating the pace of the competition. But little did I know that Matt would put an end to Jeff's shenanigans. What intrigued me most about the episode was that it exposed the hypocrisy of most of the survivalists. After all, they began the competition with the notion that everybody would be friendly and respectful towards one another, and that they would essentially rock, paper, scissors their way towards seeing who would win the $100,000. But this episode was a game changer, and the remaining survivalists would show what they were willing to do to get rid of the competition. And I already knew that this moment would ultimately come in the competition, but I didn't think it would come this soon. So let's talk about the teams, and I'll start with who I felt was the strongest team and work my way down. In episode 1, I felt that Jeff and Stacy were the strongest team. But for this episode, Matt and his team of one made a power move and convinced the remaining survivalists to work together when migrating to the next checkpoint and split up to find the survival items in the new location. And this is all being done to keep those items out of the hands of Jeff. Now I think that on paper, this is an extremely smart move on Matt's part because he's doing it to get rid of the biggest competitor and to help the not so strong survivalists get far in the competition. The only downside that I see with Matt's plan is that the other not so strong survivalists could then form smaller teams and work together to get rid of Matt. In the first episode, I think Jeff may have shown his hand too early, but in this episode, I think Matt played his hand too early, and I think that the other survivalists will eventually view Matt as a competitor and try to take him out. Furthermore, I don't think that Matt holds any moral high ground in this challenge. He deceived Jeff and Stacy when they tried to trade him for the bow and arrow, and he manipulated the other survivalists to do his bidding. So I think that Matt will go far in the competition, but I don't think that he will win at all. Next, there's Woz and Gary. Now while these two came in second to last in the trap making challenge, I was impressed with Gary's sheer will to gain energy by cooking and eating hundreds of maggots. I was also impressed with how Gary and Woz aligned themselves with Matt's supergroup instead of trying to do everything on their own. It was a power move, but at this point, I still believe Woz may be too nice and optimistic about helping the other survivalists. But we shall see. Next on my list is Jeff and Stacy. During this episode, we start to see the decline of Jeff and Stacy as a team. While they do some constructive things together, like make shoes out of their pelts, Stacy simply hates being on the team with Jeff, yet she really doesn't seem to be willing to have a come to Jesus moment with him and tell him how she really feels about the situation. Jeff's weaknesses in this competition were also exposed. For one, Jeff really doesn't have any friends or allies in the competition. Even his own partner wants nothing to do with him. And second, Jeff believes that he is the smartest person in the room, and because of that, he's not willing to accept that some of the other folks on the show can play a better game than he can. But despite Jeff's flaws, I still think that there are weaker teams on the show. Next, there's Sarah and Steven. I really didn't see much from these two in the episode that would convince me that they are a serious threat to the other survivalists, but I also don't think that they are weak by any means. Next, there's Dan and Cheney. During this episode, we see that the impala that they received in last episode had rotten, so they went to find some African potatoes and a snake to eat. So there's no doubt that these two survivalists are resourceful, but during this episode, Cheney once again felt under the weather. And at this point, I'm not completely convinced that Dan and Cheney will make it to the 21-day mark together. If they do, I'll be surprised. And lastly, there's Wes. In my previous review, I stated that Wes would really need to partner with someone in order to make it to the 21-day mark. Well, for this episode, he joins the Super Alliance and he branches off with Matt for a partnership. So while I still view Wes as being at the bottom of the list, I don't completely count him out because of how ruthless this competition can be. But this marks the end of my review. If you have any comments related to my review or the episode, feel free to leave them below in the comment section, and I'll be sure to reply to everybody. Until next time, stay tuned and stay safe. Peace.